Somewhere in California, in the spring of 2025, an accountant sat down to close the books for the quarter and had to type a number nobody wanted to type. $4.5 billion. Not stolen, not lost to a competitor, not wiped out by a bad product launch. Deleted by a 2-page memo written by a government office 3,000 miles away. The company was Nvidia, the most valuable chip maker on Earth. The memo was about exactly one country, China. And that $4.5 billion, that's not even the biggest number in this story. Stick around, because by the end of this video I'm going to show you a number 17 times bigger, and who's actually going to end up paying it. This is the story of how the two largest economies on the planet ended up holding a gun to each other's head over a piece of silicon smaller than your thumbnail. Nobody's calling it a war. Officially, it's just export policy. But when a single memo can erase billions of dollars overnight, you already know what this actually is. Let's get into it. Quick question before we go further. What do you think is the single most fought over object on the planet right now? Oil? Water? Gold? Wrong. It's this. A modern AI chip is the closest thing 2026 has to a nuclear reactor core. It's the thing training the AI running your search engine, your bank's fraud detection, your country's next weapons system, your government's surveillance software. Whoever manufactures the best version of this thing at scale doesn't just win a market, they set the pace for everything else this decade. And here's the twist almost nobody explains properly. No single country actually holds the whole chain. It's split, almost surgically, into two halves. And that split, that's the entire story you're about to watch. Half one belongs to America. Not the factories, the brains. The design of the world's best AI chips, American. The machines precise enough to print those designs onto silicon at atomic scale. There is exactly one company on Earth that can build them. It's Dutch, but it can't sell a single unit without an American license. Half two belongs to China. Not the chip, the ingredients. Rare earth metals. The stuff inside every magnet, every sensor, every missile guidance system, every EV motor, and yes, every advanced chip. China doesn't just mine a lot of it, China processes almost all of it. We're talking 90% of the world's refined rare earths running through Chinese facilities. Material mined in Australia, in the US, even in your own backyard. More often than not, it still has to fly to China just to become usable. So here's the one thing to remember for the next 18 minutes. America controls the brain. China controls what the brain is built from. Two loaded chokeholds, pointed at each other's throat. For years, both sides pretended the other one would never actually squeeze. Then, in 2022, somebody did. October 2022. Buried in a US government press release is a rule that sounds, on paper, like the most boring sentence in the world. New export restrictions on advanced chips and chip-making equipment headed to China. In practice, this is the opening shot. For the first time, Washington isn't trying to stay ahead of China's chip industry. It's trying to freeze it in place. China's move? Absorb it. Say nothing dramatic. Keep buying whatever's still legal. Classic opening round poker face. So America raises again. 2023, tighter. 2024, tighter still. And this time it reaches all the way to Taiwan, where the actual manufacturing happens. By November 2024, Washington orders TSMC, the company that physically builds most of the world's advanced chips, to stop shipping AI chips into China, full stop. And then, April 2025. This is the moment from the start of this video. The H20, one of the last Nvidia chips still legally allowed into China, gets banned outright, no warning built in for the paperwork already in motion. Nvidia is left holding inventory. It legally can no longer sell to the one market that wanted it. $4.5 billion. Gone. In one write-down. Another $2.5 billion in orders. Cancelled mid-shipment. Now here's the detail that changes how you should watch the rest of this video. Nvidia isn't a bystander getting hit by crossfire here. Nvidia is the battlefield. Every time Washington tightens a rule, it's not punishing China directly. It's punishing an American company's balance sheet. And betting the pain lands harder in Beijing than it does in Santa Clara. That's a bet. And by January 2026, Washington doubles down on it. January 15th, 2026. Instead of a blanket ban, the rules get surgical. Chips now get sorted by exact technical thresholds: how much raw processing power, how fast the memory moves. Cross the line, you need a license, granted case by case, with a 25% tariff stapled on, and a hard cap at half of what used to be legally sold. It's not a wall anymore. It's a toll booth, and Washington controls the price. For 4 straight years, America has been making every move in this game. You'd think, by 2026, China would be out of cards. You'd be wrong. Because in a boardroom in Beijing, somebody had been quietly counting the one card America genuinely cannot beat, and they were about to play it. December 1st, 2025. China's Ministry of Commerce quietly activates the strictest rare earth export controls in the country's history. And this rule isn't like anything America has tried. It doesn't just restrict raw material leaving China. It follows the material anywhere it goes in the world. Any product made by any company in any country, if it contains rare earths that were processed in China at any point in the supply chain, it now needs Beijing's permission to be sold, even if the company buying it never touched a Chinese supplier directly. Companies with military ties get an automatic no before they even finish the application. Sit with how different this is from what America's been doing. Washington's weapon takes years to bite. It slows down what China can eventually build. China's weapon can bite immediately because there is no factory on Earth, right now, today, that can replace 90% of the world's rare earth processing capacity. Not in America, not in Europe, nowhere. And here's the part that should genuinely worry you, whichever side of this you're rooting for. The target list isn't phones and laptops. It's F-35 fighter jets. It's submarines. It's every wind turbine and EV motor an entire generation of climate policy is betting on. For every American export control built to slow down China's AI ambitions, there is now a Chinese rare earth control capable of slowing down America's entire defense industrial base. This is the exact moment this story stops being America versus China's chip industry and becomes something much scarier. 2 countries, each holding a knife against the other's supply chain, realizing at the same moment that neither one can actually let go. Remember the number I promised you at the start, the one 17 times bigger than $4.5 billion. We're about to get there, because now it's time to talk about who's really paying for all of this. Most videos about this topic stop right here, at the Geopolitics. Big countries, big flags, dramatic music, roll credits. But if you actually want to understand what's happening, you don't follow the flags. You follow the money. So let's do that. Nvidia. $4.5 billion written off. $2.5 billion canceled. China used to make up roughly 17% of Nvidia's entire data center business. Call it $7 to $8 billion every single year. As of right now, a meaningful chunk of that is either gone completely or stuck waiting on a government license that may or may not come. Here's that bigger number I promised. One US think tank estimates that if these restrictions hold, the total cost to American chip makers, not just Nvidia, the whole industry, could top $77 billion in lost sales and put more than 80,000 jobs at direct risk. Treat that one as an estimate, not gospel, but even a fraction of that number would be one of the most expensive self-inflicted wounds in modern business history. Now here's the part almost nobody talks about, and it might be the most interesting twist in this entire story. While the 2 giants are busy trying to choke each other out, somebody else is getting rich on the sidelines. South Korea, Taiwan, Japan, the European Union. Billions of dollars in orders that used to flow straight down the US-China corridor are now quietly rerouting through everybody else. Companies in Seoul and Tokyo that were, 3 years ago, an afterthought in this industry are now signing deals that America and China both used to consider theirs. Sometimes, when 2 giants go to war, it's the neighbors who end up richest. And inside China itself? The response to being cut off isn't panic. It's investment. Billions of state dollars pouring into homegrown chip makers, companies like SMIC and Huawei's Ascend chip line, all chasing exactly one goal: make the American chokehold irrelevant, permanently, by building their own. They're not there yet. But every single year of restriction is another year of forced, fully funded progress toward a China that simply doesn't need America's chips anymore. which raises an uncomfortable question for Washington. What if the export ban isn't slowing China down? What if it's just teaching China how to stop needing you? Here's a detail that changes how you should read this entire story, and I saved it for right here on purpose. None of this is actually fixed. It looks like policy. Written down, official, permanent. But watch it closely over time, and it behaves like something else entirely. A negotiation. That H20 ban that opened this whole video, the one that cost Nvidia $4.5 billion, partially reversed, months later, then quietly retaxed a different way, through a 25% tariff on the next chip in line instead. A summit gets floated in Beijing as the moment further easing might happen. Every final rule somehow ends up with a case-by-case exception built into the fine print. What you're actually watching, underneath all the flags and the press conferences, isn't two governments building permanent walls. It's two governments using one company's stock price as a pressure gauge, tightening the valve when they want leverage, loosening it when they need a deal, and letting Nvidia's next earnings call quietly function as the unofficial scoreboard for who's winning the argument that particular week. Which brings us back to the gun I mentioned right at the start of this video. So, after all of that, who actually wins the chip war? Here's the answer nobody wants to hear. Probably no one, not outright. America can restrict every chip it wants, but it cannot manufacture a single advanced one without materials it does not control. China can restrict every rare earth shipment it wants, but it cannot build a modern economy or a modern military on chips it hasn't yet learned to make at the same level. Remember that image from the start of this video? Two people, each holding a gun to the other's head, standing so close that neither one can pull the trigger without taking themselves down too? That's not a metaphor anymore. That's literally the trade relationship between the two biggest economies on Earth right now. This isn't a war with a winner written into the ending. It's mutually assured disruption, and the invoice for it is getting paid, quarter after quarter, by the companies caught standing in the middle, one write-down at a time. And while these two giants stand there, frozen, neither one willing to be the first to pull back, a handful of smaller economies are quietly filling their pockets on the sidelines. Which leaves one question sitting right there, unanswered. Could a country like India be next in line to cash in? That's a different video. And if you want it, you already know what to do. Subscribe if you want the follow-up on where this supply chain goes next. Drop a comment telling me who you think blinks first, America or China. I read every one of them. See you in the next one.